my pleasure to introduce Zack Kass. Many of you know Zack. He's actually from Santa Barbara. By the way, all of us are here in Santa Barbara, so pretty good. So Zack was the go-to-market guy for OpenAI, and he's written a fabulous book, which many of you have received when you walked in. He's hugely in demand, and he lives upstairs. But anyway, I'd like to introduce Zack Kass.
I've spent 16 years on the front lines of artificial intelligence. I've seen what happens when machines begin to reason and when code starts to surprise its own creators. I joined OpenAI when there were just a handful of customers and a few million in revenue. Even then, we knew that if we got this right, it would change the world. Since then, I've watched AI move from research papers to boardrooms, from prototypes to policies, and from curiosity to necessity. I've advised Fortune 5,000 leaders and governments who all ask the same question in different ways. How do we lead in a world where intelligence is no longer scarce? And after all these years, I've come to believe something simple, but powerful. Artificial intelligence is not the story. Humanity is. AI is the brush. Human potential is the masterpiece. What we choose to create now, how we lead, what we value, what we build, will define the next chapter of human history. Welcome to the next Renaissance.
It is amazing to be back here. I was here in January to launch the book, and it was very special. I didn't tell anyone this at the time, but I knew I would be so overwhelmed with emotion that we turned the spotlight up and we turned the house lights down, so I couldn't actually see anyone's face. And now I can see just how beautiful this theater is, and it's really quite remarkable. Thank you all for being here tonight. It's really quite an honor and a really special experience. Who here is worried that AI might take your job, despite everything that Peter said? Who is worried that AI might take your job? Proud hands, if you don't mind. Strong hands. That's not a proud hand, ma'am. You gotta hold it all the way up. That's a very confident bunch anyways. Very impressive. Who here is worried that AI might take someone's job in this room? Might take the job of someone in this room. That's right. See that, Peter? By the way, I wrote about this in the book. I started observing this lots, and I wrote about it. I'm sure behavioral psychologists have written about it, but I coined it the zombie apocalypse phenomenon. And the zombie apocalypse phenomenon says that most people believe they would survive a zombie apocalypse, and their idiot neighbor would certainly die. This is funny, I'll tell you, because you're my friends. Very recently, this was about a month ago, I get off stage, and a woman comes up to me very smugly, and she goes, not everyone has an idiot neighbor. I don't have an idiot neighbor. So I said, well, you don't. and then my handler, you have handlers at these things, my handler grabs my arm. She goes, that's the sponsor. I go, she's an idiot. Get her away from me. She might be contagious. I like to joke about job displacement because it softens the blow. It's a very complex topic, and it's nice to get people in a laughing mood before we talk about it. And also, when I talk about it, I just don't talk about it for the reason most people do. I was on Bloomberg a week ago. I was on CNBC earlier this week. And inevitably, these anchors point at me at some point in the conversation. They go, whose jobs are you going to take? And I have to answer the question, or they don't invite me back. But what I really want to say is it's not an economic issue, at least not the way we're describing it. And the way we're describing it, the economic consequence of robots taking our jobs is actually really dangerous and really misguided for two reasons. And the first reason I can explain by telling a story. October 1st, 2024, the longshoremen go on strike. Anybody remember this? We're fairly elitist in Santa Barbara, so I'm not sure how many of you are aware of the things that go on the eastern seaboards, but the longshoremen are the dock workers, the people who manage the ports, and they walked off the eastern seaboard on the morning of October 1st, shutting down the American economy. And Harold Daggett, the head of the Longshoremen Union, went on CNN on the morning of October 2nd. And they give him what's called an open mic. It's what they give presidents when they declare war or union leaders when they shut down the American economy. And Harold Daggett spoke for an hour and a half, and he opened his diatribe by pointing very calmly at the camera. And he said to the American people, he said, "You have no idea how dangerous I am. I will cripple you." What did he want? Anybody remember? Oscar remembers. He didn't want safer working conditions, which is shocking because it's the most dangerous union job in the United States. And he only asked for 25 cents more on the dollar. His single demand was that the longshoremen not be automated by the ports. A guarantee of what he called a right to life. Now, I was fascinated. I watched the interview live. I watched it many times since. And I sent Harold a very long, very thoughtful email. And he sent me something very different back. He did not want to meet with me. That's fine. We went to the ports anyways. We went to Jersey, and we went to Miami, and we walked the picket lines, and we met a bunch of these guys, and some of them were very kind to give us a bunch of time, and we interviewed them. And the interviews were pretty profound, and some of the results I feature in the book. We asked these guys a battery of questions, of which 4, I thought, told us everything we needed to know. The first question, do you believe you could be gainfully employed outside the union? 82% said agree or strongly agree. Second question, was anyone in your family in the union? 85% had a father, brother, uncle, cousin, grandfather in the union. We only interviewed men. They also admitted they used the term relative loosely. Third question, do you want anyone in your family to join the union? 87% said yes. And 2 of the men said they were going to continue having children until they had a son so that their sons could join the union. And the last question, what's the most important part of your job? Multiple choice question, 7 answers. The mode, the most popular answer, community. Community. It's not an economic issue, I guess. But I couldn't square the circle because if you walk the picket lines, you only saw 2 signs. And if you Google the strike, you will only see 2. Robots don't pay taxes, and automation harms families. So I asked each of them, before every interview ended, I said, if automation harms families, who does automation benefit? Then I rephrased it. I qualified it a little. I said, who benefits economically if we automate the ports? Now, some of them did not like my tone. It had just about enough. Others of them were willing to answer it. All of them, I think, eventually arrived at the conclusion that Peter walked us through a little bit ago. Everyone. Everyone benefits economically, including eventually the longshoremen and their kids. And the only reason that we can all be certain of this is that we are all descendants of people whose jobs were automated to our collective economic benefit, and we never think twice about them. We celebrate the fact that we don't have to do the work they did. Moreover, we actually wander the earth, all of us, every day, asking implicitly and sometimes very explicitly, when is this good or service going to be better, faster, or cheaper? Without realizing what we're asking is, when is a human going to be extricated from the manufacturing of this good or service? And we don't do that because we're jerks. It's not that we want people to lose their jobs. We do it because we are rational economic actors, very well conditioned at this point in history to believe the world should get better, faster, cheaper all the time, thanks to technology and automation. And if you stare at this as long as I have, you arrive at a conclusion, at least I did, that most people in this moment are very excited to see everyone else's jobs automate, just not their own. Which explains the zombie apocalypse phenomenon. People can easily imagine how the world is going to get better, faster, cheaper if only so-and-so isn't slowing things down. And then you start looking at all the questions we've been asking around job displacement. Principally, what about the food on the table? What will we do for food? There's going to be a lot more and a lot better food on the table if we actually automate most work. But also, I'm not sure that we're going to know how to find purpose and meaning in a world where we have attached an increasing amount of those things to our work. In a world for where a few thousand years now we named ourselves after our professions, which is why there is a Miller or Smith in this room. You don't have to raise your hand. I will not invite you on stage, but I know you are here. And I know you're here because it's 2 of the 5 most common last names in the United States. Because for thousands of years, we named ourselves after our job. And I argue we stand not at the precipice of a job displacement crisis. For what it's worth, I think we will continue to toil for money. I think the work might even get more interesting in a lot of cases. Also think one of our generation's greatest sacrifices is the emotional toll, the emotional cost of separating our purpose from our work in a world where our work is going to change frequently and a lot. And I have no way of answering how we do this yet. What's interesting about this moment is, and I'm quite heartened by the fact that in 1930, one of the most prescient thinkers in modern history, a guy named John Maynard Keynes, talked about this. John Maynard Keynes was traveling Europe giving lectures to people against a backdrop of abject despair. People were literally dying in the streets, and he would go into these lecture halls and go, no, you're missing the point. It's getting really good. And people were like, John, wrong. Read the room. And then he went back home and he doubled down. He wrote a paper, The Economic Possibilities for Our Grandchildren, and published it everywhere he could. In this paper, he writes, and I quote, "I must now disembarrass myself to take flight into a future that I will not live to see, one in which humans may have solved the economic problem and be faced with something more profound." The father of modern macroeconomics proposing at some point humans would clothe, care for, feed, house everyone, and then we would face our greatest struggle yet. I get goosebumps every time. The thought that an economist in 1930 had the foresight to say at some point humans' next battle would be spiritual. My words, not his. What we are clearly facing next is rediscovering purpose and meaning in a world where we have distracted ourselves and attached so much of it to the stuff that actually doesn't derive the real stuff. Now, there's another problem with the job displacement argument. I wander around talking about the deflationary power of AI. Much like Peter, I'm very, very proud to show everyone all of the reports. Look at all the ways in which technology has made the world better, faster, and cheaper. You would never want to live in 1850 or even 1950, I say. I show the kids all the information, and they actually have come to hate me for this. I mean, on the whole, I think I'm liked by the generation, but every now and then I get comments online that are really biting, and very recently someone asked, "Has this jerk ever been in a grocery store?" And obviously I haven't, but from Santa Barbara, buddy. I have. I've been in Bristol Farms, I'll have you know, and $19 smoothie. Just kale. I read the CPI reports too. I know that stuff is getting more expensive right now. I see that a carton of eggs is more expensive than it was 3 years ago. I see that a gallon of gas is especially more expensive than it was 3 years ago. And also, a carton of eggs and a gallon of gas has never been less expensive. And the kids can understand this. They get it. They're like, yeah, fine. I'm going to travel places my parents have never heard of. I'm going to eat cuisine my great-grandparents could not have dreamed of. I've got a supercomputer in my pocket, my discretionary spending, all these things. But every one of these conversations, especially with Gen Z, arrives at the same reasonable, logical conclusion. Housing, healthcare, and education. The 3 pillars of a great society that have become prohibitively expensive for so many people in the developed world, and especially the United States. And this is where the conversation gets really sobering for you and for me and for them. I have to remind them that those 3 things are not expensive because they must be. They're expensive because we've chosen to make them that way. Housing, healthcare, and education are not technology failures, they're policy failures. Well, I'm not done yet. In a world where this TV screen was once $10,000 and now it's $100, where the supercomputer in your pocket was $20 million, now it's $1,000, where you can get actual sushi at a gas station for $6, in a world where you can drive across Los Angeles in an autonomous vehicle for $15, but a trip 5 blocks away in an ambulance might actually bankrupt you. In a world where you can study all of Harvard's curriculum in Khan Academy for $1,000 a year, but if you want to go to a university, you will be left with crippling debt for the rest of your young adult life and maybe thereafter. What are we doing? It's a serious question at this point. What are we doing? You can design the perfect job till kingdom come, but if a kid's got to work till they're 90 to afford their parents' house, what difference does it make? And here's the really sobering part. For about 700 years, every generation's greatest privilege was to pass their luxuries to the next generation as staples. And our ruling class, a geriatric, parasitic group of politicians, broke the promise. They pulled the ladder up circa 1990 and they said, housing doesn't need to get more expensive, neither does healthcare, neither does education. And those three things got about 400% more. To the extent now that 35% of men aged between 20 and 30 live with their parents. And the number is growing. So, here's what I have to say about this. One, we can do something about this. We can actually fix this very quickly. We can elect politicians that believe the value of this technology and all technologies should diffuse to the benefit of the average person, not the elites and not just for the convenient stuff, everything. And then we have to recognize as fast as possible that some of this is going to come at the cost to a collective body that have stared at their houses very excitedly and watched it get 10% more valuable year over year. Stop hoarding houses. People always say to me, they're really proud. They go, oh, we spend some time in Santa Barbara. They want to impress me. I go, oh, yeah, how much? They go, oh, a couple months a year. Oh, you have a house there? Yeah, beautiful place in Montecito. Sell it. Let a family move in. They stare at me. Yeah, sell it. Rick Caruso built an amazing property. Go stay there. Rent something. Let a family. Montecito's 56% vacancy. It's getting worse, not better. I don't know what to say. This is the issue. It's been an issue for a while, and it's even worse now. And if we let the politicians get away with it, if we let them talk about AI and the job displacement crisis, they win again. They'll die thinking they've won. Don't let them. The last thing I have to say, actually it's not. The third to last thing I have to say. Today is the best day ever to be born, despite everything I just said. And tomorrow will be too. And if you disagree with me, unfortunately, you are wrong. Sorry. But if I can intellectually convince you of this, that's actually not too hard. It's really hard, I found, to emotionally convince people of this. It's really hard, especially with parents. And actually, especially in really nice places. Santa Barbara has a lot of people that are strangely cynical. I'm like, do we live in the same place? Why? What's going on? Well, it's pretty simple. You are overexposed, grossly overexposed to negative information, and you are heartbreaking underexposed to good information. We have built a world where we are telling ourselves constantly all of the terrible things, and our kids too, and none of the good ones. And we are telling ourselves worse and worse stories about the future too. And the worst part is we're telling ourselves bad stories about the future of technology. Not even the future of politics, which has every right to be lambasted. Technology. The story of technology is the story of human progress. And we somehow believe that this is the peak. And the craziest thing is that humans have an amazingly proud history with technology. So much of what Peter showed has pulled the world out of poverty over and over again. You don't hate antibiotics. You don't hate planes, trains, and automobiles. You don't hate refrigeration. You don't hate air conditioning. You don't hate electricity. You don't hate the internet. You don't hate gas station sushi. You, some of us do, you hate your relationship with the screen. And you hate the fact that our politicians have not allowed modern technology to diffuse to the benefit of the average person. That's it. And I'm with you. And so now what we got to do is we have to recognize that we should have never given kids smartphones. And most of us, as far as I can tell, should not have social media. We sold our souls and spirit at the altar of a digital display, and the kids too, and we got to fight for it back. It's not about not watching the news. You shouldn't do that anyways. It sucks. It's always sucked. It's about getting outside and off your device too. It's about creating space where you can actually figure out all the things you're supposed to celebrate. It's about looking at the world beneath you as a wonderful thing that you can fix. Fixate on the problems that present solutions that you can contribute to. There are many. And by the way, the kids are watching. They've been performing for a while all their moralism. They'll stage school walkouts for wars they can't ever imagine, but they'll never tell on a bully or a cheater. We gotta create a world of agency and morality by showing the kids that we can fix the things in our backyard. I've got one more thing to say on the matter. Peter's right. Peter's right. If we build a lot more housing, we will solve plenty of our cost problems. But I am in favor of a progressive policy, which is a non-resident tax. Now, here's the thing. We passed rent control instead. And I have to tell you all right now, and I'm really sorry to say this, that is the last thing we should have done. There are so many ways to drive down the cost of housing, and the most incredible thing about this moment is we picked the one that's going to drive it up. I don't get it. There's empirical evidence, and so with this as this as a sermon, I'm going to say the thing: when rent control fails, and it's going to fail miserably, don't let them off the hook. Do not let them off the hook, because they're going to say, oh, it was other stuff. No, I lived in San Francisco. I watched it happen. I watched what Daniel Lurie is doing to pull the city out of its rent control mess. Portland too. We've watched this experiment over and over. You can do two things to lower the cost of housing, to allow people who provide services in Santa Barbara to live here. You can build a ton more, which we should do, and you can tax people who don't actually live here and are speculating on our land anyways. That's it. I like you very much, by the way, but I'm not going to like the effects of this policy, and quite honestly, you aren't either. I have one more thing to say. This one is a little funny, but when I came back to Santa Barbara, I emailed Arts and Lectures, and I said, hey, I've been working in AI, I'm working at this company, maybe you heard of it, and I'd really like to give a talk in town. I'll do it for free. Crickets. Crickets. When I published a book, I sent a note to The Independent. I said, I'd love if you reviewed it. Now, I produced my own show here. Now, why am I saying this? Well, a little bit is I'm petty. Bothers me. I don't know. It irks me, and I wanted to use this platform to say that. I don't know. Actually, Santa Barbara Magazine made me pay to play. They said, yeah, well, we'd love to talk about your talk. You just got to pay us a bunch of money. Okay. Why do I say this? I say this actually because this is an amazing place, and I will say, having traveled all over the world, I spend sadly 250 days in the year on the road, this is the most special place on earth by far. It is a castle on the hill. We should protect this place. And one of the things we should do is we should celebrate local voices more. And I say this now, having been through this experience. If a kid who is the 90th employee at OpenAI comes back and writes an international bestseller and can't get The Independent to review it, and can't get Arts and Lectures to let me speak for free, what the hell? We gotta celebrate local voices, and if it's not me, that's fine, but take the kids seriously, because what happens is they watch this, they grow up and they realize they gotta leave to be successful. No one's gonna care if they're successful in Santa Barbara. That's not true. So many amazing things to be built here. Celebrate people who build here, celebrate local voices, celebrate the stuff that happens in this town like it matters a lot, because it does. We don't need to drag people from all over the world to hear all the good news. We've got a bunch of brilliant people that want to talk about it, and we should do a lot more of that. Thanks a lot.